Thank you for joining us this evening. We are pleased to have with us Chris Peterson from Penny Forward. And Chris is going to speak to us this evening about entrepreneurship. Chris?
Thank you, Lori, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. I am Chris Peterson. I am an accredited financial counselor and the founder and CEO of Penny Forward. Before I get into tonight's topic, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and about Penny Forward, and then we will talk about entrepreneurship, specifically for kids and teens. So, a little bit about me. I am totally blind. I am a husband and father of two children, one of whom is 12 and the other is 4. I am a ham radio operator, a beep baseball player, a blind bowler, a darter, and I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as lots of other things. Penny Forward is an organization that I founded about 3 years ago with the help of a few other blind people. We are a nonprofit organization founded and led by blind people. Through education, mentoring, and mutual support, we help each other navigate the complicated landscape of personal finance. You can learn more about us and our organization and the programs that we offer by visiting our website at pennyforward.com. And I will be happy to give that information out at the end as well. So, what we're here to talk about tonight. Why self-employment for kids and teens? Number one, because many of them want to be self-employed. According to Junior Achievement, over 60% of teens would prefer to start a business rather than get a traditional job. For people with disabilities, including people who are blind, this allows us to make our own disability accommodations, work around our own schedules and sometimes our own stamina or other special needs, and do anything as long as it's legal that someone will be willing to pay for. So what types of businesses are we talking about here? Well, this really depends on the age and can be anything from the traditional lemonade stand to I'm sorry, the chat is the chat is confusing me a little bit because I'm hearing a screen reader in my ear. So anything from the traditional lemonade stand to providing services that people want or need either in your neighborhood or thanks to today's online world, even around the world. Lemonade stands are just one possible business idea and a good one for younger kids just starting out or somebody who wants to dabble in the business world a little bit. Baked goods and candy are other popular choices. Crafts, especially if you have a child who is crafty and enjoys attending things like craft shows. Crafts can be a great way to make a little bit of extra cash. And something that has become available in recent years and is really worth looking at, no matter what age your child is a print-on-demand business where you can have t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, other types of products printed and drop shipped on demand without really any intervention from you. You, with the help of your child, or your child with the help of you, I guess I should say, designs the products, and then you set up an online store and people go and buy them and they get shipped by the printer directly to the person. It's pretty neat, pretty simple. Another really neat business idea that I saw recently was from a young woman of college age who provides unique birthday songs for people. If you want to have somebody, if you have a friend or a family member that is having a birthday coming up, you can reach out to her. Her name is Jolene, and she will record a birthday song in a multi-track recording format. So it's multiple voices with harmonies. Um, and she charges $5 a song for that, and they sound really, really nice. And that's something that's very unique that, as far as I know, nobody else is doing. So the sky's really the limit here. Anything up to and including any good that you can think of making that is of value to somebody else, or any service, as long as that service is legal, that would be of value to anyone else. Things like babysitting or pet sitting, as an example. Um, Bringing the garbage cans from your neighbors down to the end of the driveway on or before garbage day, and then bringing them up after garbage day is something that I've seen done before. Tutoring in pretty much any subject, and this can be done at essentially any age. An older child can tutor a younger child in any subject that they might be having trouble with, um, and make a little extra money from that. Audio and video production. A lot of kids today are very familiar with and very comfortable with technology. And while it is possible to make a business out of something like a podcast or a YouTube or a TikTok channel, it is important to think about how those things might make money. And one of the possible ways that talents in that area might make money is by producing content for other people, other businesses, perhaps, or individuals who want content produced for them for whatever reason. So again, the sky's the limit, and I would encourage you to allow your child to come up with the idea and then help them and encourage them to refine it into something that will actually work as a business. So how do we get started? Well, first, make a business plan. Does that scare you? It shouldn't. A business plan is not a complicated document. There are templates online, some of which are geared towards kids. But really, a business plan is simply a document that explains to anyone who might be interested what the business is going to do and how it's going to work. So you'll want to include things like, what is the name of your business? What products or services will it offer? Who will you sell to, and why will they be interested in buying your products or services? What will it cost you to start the business? Is there any equipment or supplies that you may need in order to get it up and running? What will it cost you to run the business? Are there any equipment or supplies, particularly supplies, that you'll need to continue buying in order to make your products? For example, if you are doing knitting or crocheting, what is the cost of the yarn going to be? If you're running a lemonade stand, what is the cost of the lemonade going to be? And even the cost of the water. Because yes, we do in fact pay water bills. So a business plan doesn't have to be complicated. Again, it can be something as simple as 1 or 2 pages, and especially for a younger kid, that's all it needs to be, is 1 or 2 pages, and answer those core questions. Finally, it should answer the question, what will your prices be? And this is an important question to answer after you've figured out what your startup costs are going to be and what your supply costs or continuing costs are going to be, because you want to set your prices so that you'll make a profit, so that you'll make money off of those things. So your prices need to be higher than your costs. And there's many different ways at looking at pricing, including providing a consistent markup, say I am going to charge 25% more than it costs me to make a product, or 50% more than it costs me to make a product. And in some cases, that is a good starting point. Another way to figure out what the right prices should be would be to survey people in your target market. And this is another skill that's important for kids to learn no matter their age. They could come up with a short survey that explains their business ideas and asks people maybe on a scale how much they'd be willing to pay for that service, if they would be interested in that service, and if they have any suggestions to provide to make the idea even better. This is a survey that could be distributed if it's a neighborhood business, say something having to do with pet sitting in the neighborhood or babysitting in the neighborhood. This could be something that could be distributed door to door to your neighbors, and you may need to walk the neighborhood with your child in order to do that distribution. Though your neighborhood these days may have something like a Facebook group that you could distribute that survey on as well. The survey could be in paper form, or it could be an online form using something like Google Form. And Google Forms are really pretty easy for anyone to get started with. There are pre-made templates for things in Google Forms, and we find that Google Forms is pretty accessible when it comes to using it with screen readers or assistive technology. So this is something that you and your child can collaborate on together. One quick piece of guidance about a survey is that the longer the survey is, the less likely people are to want to take the time to fill it out. So if you want people to fill out your survey so that you have plenty of good results in order to make decisions from, make the survey somewhere between 5 and 10 questions. And even consider giving people an incentive to fill out the survey, such as doing a drawing for something that people want. Or and this might not need to be a physical product. It could be a drawing for a product or service that your business is going to sell. For example, if you're running a free pet sitting business, perhaps an incentive to fill out the survey might be being entered into a drawing for one free day of pet sitting. Another thing to keep in mind is that even with businesses run by kids, it is important to understand and to get the proper licenses and permits. Now, this doesn't have to be scary or particularly onerous. Lots of business or lots of cities and counties have streamlined processes for very small businesses, including kid-owned businesses. And so a good starting place for this would be to go to your local city hall and again, involve your kid in this process and actually meet with somebody in the business licensing department and find out from them what the process is to apply for the proper business license. And what happens if you don't do this? The government, whether it's the city government or the county government or state government or whatever, they are not going out looking to shut down small businesses or businesses owned by kids. So if your kid runs something like a lemonade stand on at the end of your driveway during the summer, it is probably likely that things would be fine. However, sometimes, particularly when it comes to older kids, but this can also happen with younger kids as well. Sometimes people get nervous by things that kids do, or irritated by things that kids do. So if a lemonade stand is bringing lots of traffic to a neighbor's in front of a neighbor's home or causing extra noise that a neighbor isn't used to. Some neighbors are going to be fine with that, and some might complain. So having the proper permit in place can avoid some situations that might arise from those complaints. For businesses run by older kids, teenagers particularly, that might be out and about in the neighborhood, maybe knocking on doors by themselves, or maybe working in people's yards or entering people's homes. Um, Again, some adults get nervous about that. They don't know what those teenagers are doing, and they may jump to the wrong conclusions. They may conclude that the teenagers are entering someone's home to vandalize or break in rather than to take care of a pet. They may assume that teenagers walking around knocking on doors are looking for vulnerable houses in the neighborhood. I wish that this weren't so, but these are some of the reasons why having the proper permits in place is important, because if someone were to call the police about your kid's business, then the police would want to know that your kid has the right permit in place in order to run that business. So do a little bit of research, maybe visit City Hall and find out what the right thing to do is. And typically, business licenses cost between $50 and $200, so it's not a huge expense, but it is something that you would want to include in your business plan. Other places you can look for information on this are SBA.gov, that is the Small Business Administration run by the federal government. And there are a number of online sites like CorpNet and LegalZoom that will provide some guidance for starting businesses as an adult or as a kid as well. So lots of different resources out there for you to look at to figure out how to be legitimate and legal about this. Another thing you may want to consider is getting insurance for a child's business. This isn't going to be necessary all the time, but if a child's business were to be um, the type of business where either the child could get hurt or where somebody else could get hurt as a result of the business, having an insurance policy in place may be appropriate. And this may be an area where um, you want to figure this into your startup costs. And you may want to, if you're able to, help your child by chipping in on some of that insurance cost for the business. Again, not applicable to all businesses and not necessarily terribly expensive either. This may be a few $100s a year for many types of policies. Another thing to think about is how you're going to market the product or service that that the business is going to offer. If this is a neighborhood business that is offering services either in your home or in neighbors' homes, such as babysitting or pet sitting, or even bringing the garbage cans up and down, you probably want to start by marketing to the neighborhood. This could mean putting up signs throughout the neighborhood. If you do that, you want to get permission from the homeowners or the business owners where you put up signs. But many businesses have community bulletin boards that you can put things up on, or many homeowners will be happy to allow you to put a lawn sign in their yard. Just make sure that it's okay with them before you go out and do that. If it is a more global business, say, an online business, then you may want to look into things like running ads on Google or social media through Facebook, um, or other things. This kind of advertising does not necessarily have to be very expensive, but it is an expense and it is something you want to take into account. So it could cost you, maybe um, a few tens of dollars a month, or a few hundreds of dollars a month, depending on the type of business and the scope. In my opinion, it's good to start small and local and branch out from there, especially for a child, because many people in the neighborhood probably already know the child, or would recognize the child if they saw them out and about. And that's always worth considering, that many people are willing to give a child-run business a try because they want to help out a neighborhood child. And again, this is an area that can be a very good experience for building confidence in your child. This whole process of marketing and surveying and talking to people. If your child is like me, when I was, 10, 11, 12 years old, I was really shy. I had a lot of social anxiety. It was really hard for me to strike up conversations with people. And by doing these kinds of things, I was able to a certain extent, get over some of that shyness. So this is definitely, if your child suffers from something like this, practicing some of these skills can really help with some of those issues. But if your child is particularly confident, then this may be kind of second nature to them. So what should you do to help? First and foremost, if your child is running a business, treat them as the boss. They're the CEO of the business. Your job is to be an employee and an advisor. Encourage them. Ask important questions that help them to be more confident that their idea is going to work. Um, Help them to learn the skills that they might not have, that they need in order to make the business work. And also help them with skills that you have that they may not need or want to have. In many cases, we have a belief that a small business owner needs to know how to be and do everything, needs to be good at everything. And that just isn't true. Many business owners start out that way, but as our businesses grow, we also need to learn to work with people who have skills that we don't have. And we also need to learn how to make that judgment call of when is it worth working with somebody that has a skill that we don't have, as opposed to when is it worth developing that skill ourselves. And one of the really neat things that kids can do is work together with other kids to build businesses. This doesn't have to be a something that you do on your own. In fact, this can be a great way to build friendships and partnerships. So find kids that have similar interests, or even kids that have very different interests or very different personalities. A shy kid, for example, may have a great idea for a business and may be very good at executing certain parts of that business, but they may want to collaborate with a more confident kid to market that business. And this brings up another point, which is that not all businesses market directly to end customers. Some businesses market to other businesses, and this can go for child-owned businesses as well as adult-run businesses. Um, for example, a child who is very interested in production, audio production, or video production. Perhaps they might be able to sell their production skills to another child who wants to run a business running lawn care equipment and mowing lawns or shoveling snow. And so between the two of them, they may be able to build a business based on the shy kid putting together the marketing material, and the athletic kid and the outdoorsy kid doing the outdoorsy kind of work. It does need to work together. And whether it's you helping out your child or whether it's your child collaborating with other kids, or whether it's a multi-family collaboration, it's important to sit down and discuss who is responsible for what, and to regularly check in with each other to make sure that everybody feels like everybody is making a valuable contribution to the business. Again, this teaches good collaboration skills and is important. This is important stuff whether you go into business for yourself as an adult or go into the working world. So what if you don't know what to do? Well, if you don't know what to do, and this may seem obvious, but I feel that it's important to call it out here. Check with your networks, the network of adults that you know at work, at home, maybe other parents that you know that are involved with your school, maybe people that are involved with your church. See if you can find any adult that knows the answers to the questions that you don't know the answers to. Especially when they find out that it's for a kid, many, many people are going to be more than happy to answer a question or even offer some help along the way. One of the things that I've learned throughout the course of my life is whether they realize it or not, adults love to teach and help kids, and they are often willing to jump at the opportunity to do that. So just ask. Again, look on sba.gov. It's a really good site for small business owners, provides lots of helpful resources, and is something to be familiar with. There are resources that are maybe more applicable to adults there, but particularly when when our kids get older and they're into their teenage years, they're starting to think more like adults, and they may want to turn a business that they start as a teen into something that they do as an adult. An example of this would be my brother-in-law, who, along with a friend of his, started a lawn care business during high school, and he's now running that lawn care business and employs a number of people, and has been doing that. And he's older than I am, so it's been something that he's been doing for the last 25, 30 years. Use the internet. It's getting easier and easier to ask questions on the internet. And while not everything on the internet is true just because it's on the internet, if you can find multiple sites that say the same thing, and if you believe that those sites are reputable, for example, they are TV stations, magazines, online magazines like Forbes or Kiplinger's or Business Insider, or lots of other reputable sites that have information about starting businesses for kids, or even starting a small business as an adult. If you are a teacher and you're listening to this presentation, you may want to check out a site called build.org. Build.org is a nonprofit organization that provides entire curriculum sets about entrepreneurship for kids. I've looked over the site. It looks to be somewhat accessible from a screen reader perspective if you are a teacher of the visually impaired and you might be blind yourself. I believe that it is going to be useful to you. And there are curriculums for all types of classes, ranging from something that you might present in, say, 2 or 3 days to whole class offerings that might span the course of years. It's a really neat site. So, what about Social Security benefits or other government benefits that your child may receive or that you may want your child to be able to access in the future? Few things to be mindful of when you're running a small business or starting employment. Number one, it's very important to keep accurate records. Um, not only is it is not only is it important for you to keep records about what you or your child get paid, it is also important to keep accurate records about what you or your child spend in order to run the business. This is particularly important for self-employment because business expenses help to reduce your net income from self-employment, which can help you to stay on benefit programs longer if you want or need to. Essentially, spend more to grow the business, and you'll still be able to receive benefits in a lot of cases. Another thing that's important is to make sure to report those things to the Social Security Administration by the 10th of each month and to know which unit of the Social Security Administration to report them to. If you are receiving supplemental security income from your for your child, or if your child is going to receive supplemental security income when they start college, they'll need to address their all of their mail to the local Social Security office, and they'll need to put on the envelope attention Title II unit. Title II is supplemental security income. If your child is receiving Social Security disability insurance, and this could be the case because one of the child's parents has passed away, it could be the case that you have a disability yourself and you are receiving SSDI, and therefore your child is eligible to receive SSDI based on your work record, then they will need to report to the Title 16 unit. And there also are some cases where you might be receiving benefits from both, and then it's important to send the reports to both units. They don't communicate with each other, and this is one of the more common causes of snafus with Social Security benefits. So understanding how to do this, and it isn't particularly hard. It uh, is something that you can fill out a brief form and submit by mail. And unfortunately, the best way to do this is by paper mail, though there are some online reporting methods as well these days. Um, the best way to do this is to keep accurate records, make copies of the form for each month of the year, maybe put them in a 3-ring binder or something, and then fill out each form, make a copy of it, and send it to the Social Security Administration each month, and retain a copy for yourself. That way, anytime you have to communicate with the Social Security Administration, you have a record of what you communicated to them in case that communication got lost somewhere. Also, if
Chris,
you, yes,
this is Lori. If I could
Mhm.
just add one more thing to keep track of,
Sure.
especially when it is a minor who is blind or low vision, and has the Social Security disability or SSI based on their blindness, if you as the parent or somebody else is assisting them? Are you volunteering to, say, read something that's not accessible? That also needs to be noted with Social Security, because while you may not be paid for your services, the value of your time can reduce what I will refer to as your countable income. Um, so that's just also something else to keep track of.
Yes, that's an excellent point. Those those types of things also apply to traditional employment, by the way. If your employer provides accommodations um, in order for you to perform your job function, those accommodations, even though they may not be directly paid, should be reported to the Social Security Administration as well. Lori, by the way, is an expert on this stuff, probably much more than I am. So, we could definitely go into a whole webinar on benefits. The one final point, though, I want to make on this before we move on is that it's important not to hide things from the Social Security Administration, and it's important to pay your self-employment taxes. If you run a business that brings in $400 a year or more in profit, you are required to file a tax return for that business. But even if you don't earn $400 a year in profit, it may be important for you to file a tax return and to pay self-employment taxes. One of the things that may do for you or your child in the long run is it may eventually allow them to qualify for Social Security disability insurance rather than supplemental security income, which could result in a higher payment and could result in different and in some ways maybe a little bit less restrictive and other ways not um, rules regarding how much you are allowed to earn and how much you are allowed to have in countable resources. Again, not really the scope of this particular webinar, but I do want to point out to you that while many people see employment or self-employment as being something that's kind of scary, especially if they're trying to protect their child's eligibility for benefit programs, in uh, in a lot of ways, working some of the time, even part-time, can actually improve your child's eligibility for benefit programs or make them eligible for other benefit programs, which might be a better fit for them in the long run. So it's really something I wanted to make sure to call out. So before and I apologize. I didn't pay attention to exactly when we got started, and we started a little bit late. So Lori or Richard or Katie, if you want to give me a time check, I would appreciate it. I do want to say one thing before we open it up for questions. And that is, many people worry about what if it doesn't work out, or what if it works out too well, and suddenly we have way more work than we really bargained for. And I have two answers to that. Number one, what if it doesn't work out? Well, then change the focus of the business and try something else. And use what you learned as a learning experience to make it better. We often fear the worst case, right? That no customers are going to come in, or that nothing's going to happen. In reality, there is usually a middle ground. Maybe you are getting customers, but you're not getting enough. Or maybe you're not getting them often enough. And then it might be worth looking into, well, what do we need to do to bring in more customers? Or what do we need to do to cut our costs down so that the business is healthy even with the small number of customers that we have? how can we keep the business running for longer? Businesses that have been running for longer tend to be more successful than businesses that are just starting. What if it works too well and suddenly you find yourself with all kinds of work that you really didn't bargain for? Well, there's a few things that you can do there. Number one, and probably the first thing that you might want to consider, is raising your prices. Raising your prices can reduce the number of customers that you have, um, but it can also make less work for you and bring in more money for the business at the same time. If you're reluctant to raise your prices, or just don't want to, or don't think that's going to work, you could also consider hiring employees or hiring contractors to help you to even the load. And some business owners with disabilities have even chosen to hire other people with disabilities to help spread the load for their business. So this could be something again where maybe you start something small and it turns into something big, and you want to involve people from your child's networks in allowing it to continue and be healthy. And of course, a combination of the two is possible as well, raising your prices and bringing on employees or contractors is a good option. With that, I do want to leave some time for questions. I did note that there was one in the chat. However, I am not able to read and talk at the same time, so I did miss it. But let's see what kind of questions there are. Is any?
Sure. This is Lori. The one that I saw in the chat was, what if the parents have the business in their name and they allow the child to volunteer to develop work skills? Chris, you and I
Mhm.
might have different answers. So go ahead.
We may have different answers. Number one, um, allowing the child to volunteer to develop work skills sounds great. Allowing them to get paid to develop work skills, in my opinion, sounds even better. And in fact, uh, one of the interesting things about child labor laws is that children that work for a business that's in the parent's name, um, in a lot of cases, can earn much lower wages than children, than even minimum wage. And they also can work at much younger ages than they might be able to if they were to go out and seek employment uh, outside of a family business. Having said that, um, your children, just like you, they are doing work. That work is supporting the family and is also supporting the business. And so I would hope that you would at least consider the idea of paying them for their time. And there are different ways that you could do that. You could choose to pay them in cash, or an allowance that they can spend right now. You could choose to put that money into something like an ABLE account or a 529 educational savings plan for later, or a combination of the two. And um, give the child the best of both worlds. And then Lori, I'm curious to know what you have to say about this from a benefits perspective, because I'm assuming, or at least I would assume that some of the people that are asking this question are thinking that if I allow my child to volunteer, it helps them to stay on a benefits program.
Right. First of all, I just want to say I am speaking as a nationally certified benefits practitioner for the last 10 plus years. And that's not my work through APH. Um, so it, it is a really good idea to pay your child, I believe, like Chris said, because it paying them shows them value of their time, whether that be through a stipend that you give them or something like that, or an actual wage on your payroll. Social Security purposes look at employment through a family-owned business differently. It's a subsidy or a special condition. It's both of those. That's two different things, a subsidy or a special condition. So those are two work incentives that are designed to kind of look at the pay from a family business differently um, when the individual is employed through a family business.
Can you expand on that?
Um, with looking at the time, it's pretty, it's somewhat complex, but it's basically some formulas and different things that get taken into consideration, including, you know, what type of work it is and what is the relationship, that type of thing. Um,
There
Yeah.
was a
for,
comment
as
in
a short
the
answer.
there was a comment in the Q&A that failure could also be a good measure of success, which is absolutely
Yes,
true.
Absolutely
very,
true.
very true. Because I think sometimes our children with disabilities go through school or go through community programs and everybody says lovely things, but sometimes what we see at home is not always the same thing. And, you know, those realities need to come forward and be addressed, however that is. Um, you know, so and failure is good. I always tell people, look, we like to know, do we enjoy cleaning the toilet or not?
That's true.
Chris, if you could, thank you so much for your excellent presentation. I know we condensed it to about 45, 50 minutes, but I think you got the high points for our audience listening live and those recording. Can you share out a little bit about how people can find out more about the resources you shared and what website or websites they may want to go to?
Absolutely. The organization that I lead is called Penny Forward. That's two words, PENNY FORWARD. We offer self-paced online courses which are appropriate for teens and up on various personal finance related topics. We also offer weekly workshops, a Tuesday Turning Pages book club, a great podcast, which again is appropriate for people of all ages, and a weekly newsletter, as well as one-on-one financial counseling. And I offer that to parents, to kids, to adults, or to families, depending on your unique situation. Our website is pennyforward.com. Our email address is pennyforward@pennyforward.com. We also have a toll-free phone number. We have a small staff, so if you do get a voicemail, please leave a voicemail. We will call you back. That toll-free number is 888-332-5558. Again, 888-332-5558. And all of that is available on our website at pennyforward.com.